All right, welcome back to Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I'm a senior advisor and the head of marketing at Shadow Partners. And today I am joined by a colleague. His name is Nick Durham. He is a general partner at Shadow Ventures. It's a little difference there between Shadow Partners and Shadow Ventures. Maybe we'll get into that later. But I asked Nick if he could come on today and talk about go to market. He says, yeah, go to market is life or death. And so that's okay. That seems pretty
Sounds ominous.
extreme. It does sound ominous. So I'm wondering, Nick, when you say that, you say go to market as life or death. It's what are you contemplating exactly when you think go to market? I mean, is there something bigger here, or are we thinking strictly about startups?
I mean, yeah, we could take that question pretty far, Jeff, back to our spiritual discussion before this.
We could, yeah.
I think the light the purpose of that title is that the most important thing for any startup is survival.
Yeah.
And truly, like for in the context of your business, if you don't figure out a great go-to-market strategy, especially in our market, and I want to make that point clear, and we can talk about some of the intricacies and nuances
Yeah.
of the built environment. But if you don't figure that piece out, the traction piece, if you can't prove to the market that you're solving a painful enough problem, creating enough value, then you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. When my students in my incubator class, I try to keep it really simple for them in the very beginning. So, what's a problem that needs to be solved? Right. And so we do a little exploration. They come up with some ideas. And then the question becomes, okay, can you solve that problem? Does anybody else think that's a problem? Does anybody care enough about that problem that they want a solution? And is anybody willing to pay you for that solution? So we kind of go down that route. Um, and so what you're saying really resonates with me because that's, that theirs is just for a class, right? But what you're talking about, startups in the built environment, startups that are innovating with built environment solutions, if they're going to survive, as you said, they've got to have a great go-to-market strategy. So you mentioned intricacies of the marketplace. What are some of those intricacies?
Yeah, I think the key ones that come to mind, and this will differ, and we'll put a broad label on the space as the built environment, as most
Yeah,
people know
yeah,
that shadow covers. Um, but the intricacies of construction might be the fragmentation of
mhm,
the construction industry. I think the numbers in the U.S. alone, there's 500,000 contractors. That's insane to have to sell to that many different types of businesses. And by the way, like the that cohort of 500,000 general contractors represented across many different geographies, many different types of construction, often um, many different sizes and scopes. You have residential versus commercial. You can break down commercial into 5 different types. You can break down residential into many different
yeah,
types. And so like it, the go to market playbook for that startup that's selling into the construction market ends up being like very detailed, or it should be, because you have to kind of you have to make choices on who you're targeting your message and essentially
right,
the company to. When you're looking for initial leads and you're looking for places to market and advertise, you have to make those decisions. You're not going to reach the people that you want if you're just blanket marketing to any construction publication, right?
right,
And the same thing, you look at the design space, you look at the engineering space. There's differences if you're selling into those markets too. Um, how design and engineering firms get paid is and where they sit in the value chain within the built environment is very different than the construction manager or the real estate developer or the real estate owner. And knowing where they sit in the chain and all the different specialties that I alluded to in construction related to the fragmentation, which would be like, what type of design work are you doing? What type of engineering work are you doing? Is it structural engineering? Is it
right,
civil? Is it um, knowing the scope of the type of work that engineering firm that you're selling to? It potentially changes everything with your marketing strategy. And you know, I saw a great post yesterday. It alluded to marketing and go to market as a hedge fund of strategies, and I really liked that. Bless you. I really like that concept because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to look for pockets of your potential customer, and you're trying many different ways to get in front of them and to find a channel that resonates with them and a message that resonates with them. And oftentimes, like it's going to be many different strategies. It's not going to be the first thing that you try. It may not be paid
Right.
Facebook ads, or it might be paid Facebook ads. It might be trade shows, or it might be. I had a TikTok video that went viral in a in a construction channel, right? But you don't. The point is, like, it's very hard to know. Timing is a big thing. Like sometimes, if you do any content marketing, there's the ability for the content that you write to get picked up by a really large outlet and bring hundreds of thousands of page views when you average 10 the day before, right?
Right.
And that's oftentimes lucky, and just the right time, right place. And so the hedge fund approach when it comes to go to market, I think is a smart way to look at things. And what worked yesterday isn't always going to work tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. When I'm talking marketing with clients, with people in our ecosystem, my very first question is, who is your ideal customer? Who's your ideal client? Depending on what it is that product or service, et cetera. And what I have found is that that's a really hard question for a lot of people to answer. If it's a professional services firm, a architecture, engineering contractor, somebody like that, they typically will have made the decision, oh, these are the types of projects that we do. But then they don't go down, right? They don't go down layers down to, oh, these are the specific clients that need or want those types of projects, right? They haven't
Mm.
gone all the way to what I would call the ideal customer or the ideal client. So when you're thinking about the go-to-market for a startup, maybe they're tech, maybe they're robotics, maybe there are a lot in our portfolio, all of them focused on the built environment, but different products and services. What are some of the most successful strategies or techniques that you have seen? That somebody that's watching right now might go, I could learn from that. I could take that.
Yeah, I'll I'll answer this question in two parts. I think so. And for the audience, my background before joining Shadow Ventures was on the go to market side. I worked in sales and marketing roles, and I personally have experimented with a lot of things, and also got to see what worked, with companies we were competing with, right?
Mhm.
And so I kind of look at things through that lens, which is different than potentially my two partners on the venture side, KP and Matt, look at things. And I think that's why they like me. But you know, the things that work for one type of startup, let's call it a B2B SaaS startup, this
Okay.
company selling pure software, probably going to be pretty different than something that works for a deeper tech startup. And let's call that a robotics company. And to give a concrete example, let's include a Shadow Ventures portfolio company called Icon. B2B SaaS company is probably going to have more competitors. Barrier to entry is lower. So it's got to be blatantly obvious to the audience that they're marketing to what problem they're solving and why they're better than everyone else. It can't just be the problem, because they're going to see 5 to 10 other solutions that are knocking on their doorstep to meet them. And so in terms of what works, I've always started with a place of like, what aren't we? What are
I
we
like
what are we
that.
not?
Yep.
And really defining very clearly that answer for the startup, because then you start getting into like, okay, we can actually start positioning ourselves. If we say what we're not, we don't have to like try to be everything to everyone and then have no identity and have no differentiation from our competitors. the so in terms of like successful, like I'll say like the B2B SaaS companies that I've seen do really well understand that point really, really well. And it infiltrates every single aspect of their marketing, whether it's how they appear and look at trade shows. And that'll be an example. Like there's several companies in the multifamily space. Multifamily is a pretty trade show oriented industry that they just do phenomenal at trade shows. The design of their booth is thoughtful. It's on brand. The aesthetic,
Mm,
the attention to detail that they pay with even like down to the color of the shirts that they wear,
yeah.
the wood paneling versus a standard um, the standard trade show table or chairs. These are like all significant choices that influence the potential customer and tell that story for you that you're trying to
Hmm.
tell through words on your website, right? So I'll say like the people that perform really well on the marketing side all understand they understand positioning incredibly well, who they're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And on the going back to the icon example, we've seen when I joined Shadow, icon was still pretty early stage, um, but it was very apparent that what they were doing was highly marketable. 3D printed houses. Fascinating thing. I talked to somewhat a friend came over last night. Explain what type of investments do you guys make at Shadow Ventures? Icon is a great example that always gets people excited. Um, and it's transformational, right?
Hmm.
So like, the aesthetic is different. The idea of a home for half the cost and half the time through printing concrete through a printer that humans invented, not like materials from the earth. Um, it's and or labor using materials from the earth, and I think that's just like it's a fascinating concept in and of itself. So from the get go, they understood that and they leveraged that in the biggest way that they could, which was through PR channels with
Sure.
media outlets that um, had covered housing previously and probably would be very interested in their mission
Yeah.
and what they were doing to bridge the affordability gap. So like what they did well was they understood the product, they understood its marketability, they understood how to make it newsworthy, how to talk about it being newsworthy with PR firms, PR outlets, media companies, the
Hmm.
largest in the world, and they told their story incredibly well.
Yeah. Yeah. So on one hand, you've got the SaaS product, and I love the approach. This is what we're not. It's a great place to start to differentiate yourself and position yourself, as you said. And then on the other hand, you've got what I would say is more of an, in a way, an aspirational approach. Yeah, we're three. It's hard to say we're just 3D printing houses. That doesn't sound right. But we're building homes, but in a very different way for a very different purpose. And to me, that comes off as a much more aspirational um, positioning for that particular brand, that particular product. And that's so I think that's a great juxtaposition. It's a great example. Know who you are, know who you're not, um, know who your ideal customer is. Um, great, three great things to keep in mind as you go to market for your startup. Um, if you're watching right now, listening right now, and this is starting to click with you, this is starting to make sense to you. If you want to know more, of course, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Nick on LinkedIn, connect with us. This is probably where you're seeing this right now. And if you want more conversations like this, we've got an opportunity coming up. One of our colleagues said that the conversations that happen at Shadow Summit are really, really different because they're total geek outs. It's a bunch of people geeking out, going super deep on whatever the topic of the conversation is. And so Shadow Summit is coming up in October. It's beginning the 24th, the evening of the 24th, the 25th, and 26th in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the seventh annual Shadow Summit. And as the CEO of Shadow Ventures pointed out, KP Reddy said, Shadow Summit 2023 will be a Cliff's Notes version of everything that's happened in innovation for the built environment, and then also a preview of what you need to expect, what you need to plan for, what you need to budget for in terms of innovation in the built environment in 2024. So if this conversation has intrigued you, check out shadowsummit.com. The URL is in the bottom left of your corner right now. We're continually updating that site now as we work out the schedule. We nail down all the speakers and the different panels and things that are going to happen. But these are the kinds of conversations and much, much deeper than this that'll happen at Shadow Summit in October in Atlanta. Nick, thanks a lot for this conversation. Any last thoughts on go to market that I know we've got a very short amount of time here. We could talk about this for days, but any last
Yeah,
thought?
I'll close with do not underestimate the importance of go to market.
Yeah,
If you're a founding team, it needs to be prioritized in the same way that product is prioritized.
yeah,
A great product that has a terrible go to market probably will fail.
yeah. That's I
So we'll end it
we
on an ominous note.
well, yes, and I'm gonna double down on that because as you were saying that, the one thing that comes to my mind is I do a talk called Commodity as this commodity does. And in that, I use the example of Creative's Nomad Jukebox. You're just going to have to Google this stuff because we don't have time. Creative's Nomad Jukebox, which went to market 18 months ahead of the iPod. Have you ever owned a Creative Nomad Jukebox
I do
or an
remember the
iPod?
product for what it's worth, but no, I did
Mhm.
not own it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study because 18 months is a millennia in terms of consumer electronics. And I actually gave that talk in Cincinnati last week, and somebody raised their hand and said, I actually owned one of those.
Hmm.
I've given that talk to thousands of people, and that person was the second person that ever
Wow.
raised their hand
Yeah.
and said I owned one versus the iPod. And in that talk, I give, here's how they went to market, here's how Apple went to market, vastly different and
Mm.
vastly different results. So to sort of bolster
Love that
your
example. I
argument
mean,
there.
great obvious example. The iPod
Yeah,
is like a top 5 technology product that I've used. I
yeah,
mean, it's the
100%.
best.
And it led to this, right? So
Yeah.
where's the jukebox today?
Yeah.
In a
Yeah.
museum.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well,
Appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nick, for this conversation. For all of you out there that are watching this either live or on the replay, we appreciate you. Go to shadowsummit.com, join us in Atlanta, and I'll be back tomorrow with another Shadow Short. Thanks, everybody.